This lesson reviews foreshadowing. So here we go. Foreshadowing in books and movies and short stories. So foreshadowing refers to the hints and the clues that an author leaves about something that's probably going to happen later in the story. And authors and movies do this strategically to hook you in, to hook the reader into what's going to happen. Okay, so what does foreshadowing look like in movies or TV shows? How do you know when it's happening in something you're reading? It's a little bit easier to tell in something you're watching because sometimes the music changes, sometimes the camera zooms in on a particular object, sometimes the camera zooms in on a person's face so you can see the expression and it makes you think that something is going to happen later on related to that. But it can be a little bit trickier in something that you're reading. Okay, so the way that we can tell in what we're reading is that a lot of times details about the setting can show us foreshadowing. So let's look at this little excerpt here in the middle of your screen. Ominous storm clouds suddenly blew in from the west and darkened the skies above the birthday party. All right, so you can picture a birthday party outside. You can see the clouds in the sky darkening all of a sudden. You can see the wind picking up. That's one example of how setting might look, of how a setting might look in a story or in a book that you're reading. The author is using those details on purpose because the author is trying to help us as readers think about what might come next. So you can see how foreshadowing can actually work really well with the details of a setting. And not only does it provide hints about what's going to happen later on in the story, but it also kind of makes you think about how the mood of a story is affected. Would the mood of a story change if it went from happy, bright, sunny outside birthday party to it's dark, it's kind of windy? Like, yeah, the mood of a story would definitely change because of that. So, foreshadowing can definitely affect the mood of a story for sure. You can also think about how writers use dialogue. So when characters are speaking, even when characters are thinking, that is another way that writers create foreshadowing. So let's look at the text here in the little box, okay? Don't look inside that box, Mama warned. Whatever you do, she repeated, don't you dare peek inside. I watched her go on down the pathway, and then I turned and tried not to even glance at the box. So think about the dialogue here, the part where people are talking. Think about what you know about the character in this little excerpt. Think about how that dialogue and that description gives some foreshadowing clues as to what might happen in the future of a story. What are the chances that the kid in this little situation, like what are the chances that this kid is going to look in the box? Pretty high. Now maybe he or she won't look in the box, but the author puts that in there for a reason, right? The author did not just take up space on the page to mention that this person turned and tried not to even glance at the box. It's there for a reason. It's foreshadowing. It's helping us think that, okay, this kid really wants to get into the box. I wonder if he'll do it. You know, I wonder what's going to happen next. There's a strong possibility this kid is definitely going to look in the box. Okay, sometimes it can be really cool to watch a movie over again or to read a story over again just to see those clues that you missed the first time. So, have you ever seen a movie again? Have you ever read something again where you notice things that you missed before? And now that you're watching a movie for the second or third or 20th time, it's like, oh, I missed that. I missed where he dropped the pencil. Oh, I wish I had seen that before. Oh, I missed where that door creaked open at the end of that scene. I didn't see that before. Oh, now I know what that was there for. So, foreshadowing, whether it's a movie, whether it's a TV show, whether it's a book or a novel or story, foreshadowing clues are put there on purpose. They're like little breadcrumbs that lead you as the reader, or that lead you as like the movie watcher to think and to suspect that something is going to happen later on in the plot. Okay, so what about a short story or, a book or a movie that you know of where foreshadowing is an important part of the plot? So think of something you've seen before, watched before, read before, where you can pretty much see what might happen next. Now, you may not know how it happens or why it happens, but you just get that feeling that something is going to happen next. Think about how movies and authors create that feeling for you. Like, how do you know when you're reading a part in a story that's considered foreshadowing? Like, how do you know when, okay, this is foreshadowing, this is a clue, something's going to happen? So think about that. One of the easiest ways to think about it is to look at movies, look at the way movies do it, and then you can start thinking about where you see it in books and stories too. Okay, so if you go to YouTube, there are all kinds of videos on foreshadowing. You can type in foreshadowing in literature. You can type in examples of foreshadowing, foreshadowing in movies. Type in any of those into the search bar in YouTube and you'll find so many examples. Here's one of my favorites, and it's a YouTube video that actually walks us through 10 movies that use foreshadowing in their plots. Now, if this link won't work, let me show you an alternative. Okay, if you're watching this on a computer but you've got your phone near you or your iPad near you, you could actually scan this QR code and it'll go straight to the movie that I'm showing you here. So go ahead and scan that. You could also, if you're on a computer, like a desktop or laptop computer, you could also grab a screenshot of that QR code, but you can scan this and like I said, it'll go right to the collection of little video clips that all use foreshadowing. Okay, so this is what it looks like. You can tell this is a scene from Monsters, Inc. if you've ever seen that before, right? Is it Monsters, Inc.? Or am I getting that mixed up with another one? I might be getting it mixed up. But anyway, there are 10 movies in here that do this. So let's see. I think I can actually... Okay, there's a link here. Okay, I can open the link and it'll go straight over to YouTube. And then
Little Red Riding Hood. Let's start the story a different way. It was dark inside the wolf.
Okay, here we go. Skip the ads.
While Mike and Sully are sneaking Boo into the factory, Mike lists off will be including any movie with the Disney name attached, meaning that Pixar movies will also be included. Naturally, a spoiler alert is in order. Number 10, Banishment and the Abominable Snowman. Monsters, Inc.
It's too late! We're banished, genius! We're in the human world!
Monsters, Inc. is full of, well, monsters, and the legendary Abominable Snowman is one of them. But before he tries to charm the protagonist with his yellow snow cones, he is actually mentioned by Mike.
Just think about a few names, will you? Loch Ness, Bigfoot, the Abominable Snowman. They all got one thing in common, pal. Banishment!
While Mike and Sully are sneaking Boo into the factory, Mike lists off some banished monsters, including the snowman, and declares that they could be next. Later in the movie, Mike and Sully are indeed banished by Waternoose, and the two meet up with none other than the Abominable Snowman.
Hey, take my buddy Bigfoot. When he was banished, he fashioned an enormous diaper out of poison ivy. Wore it on his head like a tiara. Called himself King Itchy.
It's not only a cute little instance of foreshadowing, but a clue that the snowman may have once been an employee at Monsters, Inc., which did end up being confirmed in the prequel.
I'll have you know tampering with the mail is a crime punishable by banishment. Yes, sir.
We're right on it, Mr. Snowman.
Number 9. You're a Beast. Brave.
Never there for me. This whole marriage is what you want. Do you ever bother to ask what I want?
There are actually 2 scenes that foreshadow the exact same plot point. In the opening scene, Merida's mother Eleanor chases the young Merida and declares that she's going to eat her like some kind of dangerous creature.
I'm going to gobble her up when I find her. Eat it!
Later in the movie, when Merida is all grown up, she calls Eleanor a beast during a heated argument.
You're acting like a child. And you're a beast! That's what you are!
She had no idea how right she was about to be. Following the argument, Merida is given a spell by a witch, and in turn gives it to Eleanor, turning her into a bear.
Mom?
And while she originally retains some semblance of humanity, she slowly transitions into a violent beast throughout the movie.
Dad, don't hurt her!
Number 8. Ernesto.
Okay, so we won't watch all of those here. You can definitely find that on YouTube. So like I said, you can just type in examples of foreshadowing in movies or foreshadowing examples in movies. You'll find this video. I think it's titled 10 movies that use foreshadowing. I think that's the title right there. And like I said before, You can also go to the QR code right here. If you're watching this on a computer, but maybe you've got your phone or your iPad, you can scan it and check that out there. Okay, next, this is the practice assignment that we're going to work on for foreshadowing. So let me go through a little bit of this together with you. All right, let's see if I can, here we go, increase. All right, so let's just look at the first box, the one that's already filled in for you. All right, so right here, foreshadowing. A writer uses foreshadow to give clues about what could happen later in the story, which is what we already talked about, and it's what the examples in the video that I pointed you to on YouTube, it's the same thing of what they talk about. So across the top, we've got foreshadowing, we've got an example, and then here's what might happen later in the story based on the example. Okay, so this is where we're going to make some inferencing based on the clues given us in the foreshadowing section. Okay, so foreshadowing can be where the author gives you a clue about a character. Foreshadowing could be maybe a clue about the plot, like what might happen next. So when we're looking down here, it could involve a clue about the plot. Foreshadowing could be a clue about an upcoming problem. And of course, foreshadowing can also be a clue about events in the story, like other things that are going to happen. So let's look up here at the top. We're going to look at how foreshadowing can be used to tell us a little bit more about a character. So let's read the example together. This is the example of foreshadowing. Mrs. Dennis was not one to put up with anything. If a child in the neighborhood even took a walk down the sidewalk in front of her house, she would give that child a mean look, shoo him on his way, except for Eric. Mrs. Dennis thought Eric looked like he was maybe the one and only nice kid on the block. Okay, so if that's something that we're reading, let's think about what this excerpt might be foreshadowing. What might happen later in the story based on that information? So here's one way to think about it. Well, maybe Mrs. Dennis isn't all that bad. This makes me think that maybe she and Eric might even become friends, and then maybe Eric will show her that the other kids are good too. Do I have evidence in this example over here to support my idea? Yes, I do. So maybe Mrs. Dennis is not all that bad. So maybe this right here, she thought Eric looked like he was maybe the one and only nice kid on the block. This example supports the idea or the thought that maybe she's not all that bad. Maybe she and Eric might become friends later on because it says over here that she basically looks meanly at other kids and shoos them off of her property. She shoos them out of her way and moves them on their way. But it sounds like she's not doing that with Eric. So maybe she's had a bad experience before. Maybe something good will happen with her and Eric. Now, is this opinion, right? This right here, is this opinion the only possible opinion based on this excerpt over here? Of course not. There might be another way to think about it. You might see other things that could be foreshadowed, and that's perfectly fine. It's not about everybody getting the one right answer here. It's about making a logical hypothesis based on information in the example. So maybe this isn't what you thought. Maybe when you were reading this excerpt, you thought that maybe you thought something mysterious was happening in the neighborhood. Maybe you thought that there's something different about Eric. It could be anything else too. But the goal is that we're trying to make a logical inference about what might happen later in the story based on the clues in the example over here. Okay, so there are 3 other examples, and your task is to think about what might happen later in the story based on the example. So when you come down here to number 2, you're going to read about a clue about the plot. There's a clue about the plot, something that might happen next. You're going to read the excerpt right here, and then you're going to go ahead and type in your response over here. Okay? Same down here. You're going to read a clue about an upcoming problem. You'll type in your response over here. And then you'll read one more clue about the events in the story, and you're going to type what might happen later in the story. It's not always about what's going to happen next. We're taking this a step further, and we're simply thinking about what clues you're finding in these examples, the ones in this column, What clues are you finding in these examples that make you think there's something being foreshadowed here? That's what you're putting over here. So these are the 3 that you'll work on. All right,